a few polls to get us started, just to kind of allow the presenters to get a feel of who's in the audience today. So I'm going to launch this first poll, which is really just asking what field you represent today. So career and technical education, adult education, workforce, secondary, or if none of those and other, please feel free to put that in the chat so that we kind of know who we're talking to today here. So it looks like we've got pretty good representation from CTE, adult education, a few workforce individuals, secondary. Some of the individuals who said other said higher ed, college foundation scholarships manager, adult ed and CTE at ICCB. Wonderful. So thank you all for joining us. And then one more just to get a feel of people's familiarity with Perkins 5 and special populations. So are you somewhat familiar? You've heard of the term, the law, very familiar, or not at all? This is the first time you even heard of Perkins 5 or special populations. Okay, and again, it looks like we have some who are a little familiar, some who know Perkins 5 and special populations, and some that are not at all. This may be the first time they're hearing of it. So in that case, just to kind of level set for everyone, I do want to give a very brief overview of Perkins 5 and special populations. So Perkins 5 is the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act. We refer to it as Perkins 5 because it's just easier and quicker. But that is the federal guidelines for career and technical education. And it really emphasizes the alignment between education and the workforce system, as well as those connections between secondary and post-secondary CTE programs, and then engagement with stakeholders, both at the state and local level. And within Perkins 5, they refer to special populations. And for those of you in the workforce system, you may have heard of targeted populations, which are very similar for whatever reason, just a different name. But special populations are students that are eligible under Perkins 5 for additional supports and services because they have some potential hurdles that may limit their ability to succeed within the program. And so that can be, there are 9 under Perkins 5. And so some of them are students with disabilities, English learners, out of workforce individuals, or students experiencing homelessness. Like I said, there are 9, but they do overlap a lot with those targeted populations. And so while Anna and Rose are talking, I will share some additional resources for those who may not be as familiar with special populations, because we do have a lot of resources on those. But again, those are individuals that CTE serve, adult education serves the same populations, the workforce system is supporting and working with the same populations. It's just a more specific group that's called out within Perkins 5. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our presenters for today, Anna and Rose.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming today, and thank you, Brittany, for having us come and talk about the work that we've been doing at Rock Valley College. My name is Anna Wandtke, and I am the Perkins Coordinator at Rock Valley College. I'm getting over a cold, so forgive me if I need to take drinks throughout the presentation. My voice is not usually in this register. And then Rose, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Rose Goodloe. I'm the personal and success counselor along with the homeless liaison here at Rock Valley College.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. We were asked to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing at Rock Valley College. And we have a fairly robust approach to our special populations, and we're focusing particularly on our out of workforce and students experiencing homelessness. But the process that I'm talking about is duplicated for all of the special populations. We have the same thing going on for all of them. Just a little bit about the college in general to kind of help you understand, where we're at and the populations that we're serving. Rock Valley was founded in 1964. It's about 85 miles northwest of Chicago, west of Elgin. We're serving primarily Boone and Winnebago counties, but there are portions of other counties that we also serve. In this academic year, there are 5,861 students enrolled. So that gives you just a very brief snapshot of what's going on at Rock Valley and kind of where we're situated. We've been gathering data on students who are out of workforce for quite some time. Those of you who work with Perkins Special Populations know that it used to be called displaced homemakers, and they have since changed that verbiage to out of workforce, which I think is a much better name for it. So we've been collecting that data for some time on the enrollment form. But under Perkins 5, they added some new special populations, which included students experiencing homelessness. So that's when we started gathering information on the number of our students who were experiencing homelessness. And somewhat to our surprise, we had a large number of students who were self-identifying as having housing insecurity. Do I think that all of a sudden we had an influx of students who are homeless? No, I do not think that. I think that these were probably always the case. You know, we always had a large number, but we just weren't tracking that information. So it was important, I think, for us to realize the struggles that some of our students are undergoing that we maybe weren't fully aware of before. Just to help you kind of understand that we are just dipping our toe in a pool that other people have been working in for quite some time. Rockford is well aware that the homeless population needs to be housed and has been working on this since 2014. They partnered with an organization called Community Solutions. And as a result, they were able to reach functional zero. I'll explain what that is in a second. Functional zero for veteran homelessness and functional zero for chronic homelessness by 2017. Both populations were functional zero. So this slide kind of explains it a little bit more, and I'm borrowing from the Community Solutions website here. So please feel free to, I'll share the slides. Feel free to click and explore. There's a lot of good information here. But for functional zero for homelessness, what we're really talking about is that there are fewer veterans that are experiencing homelessness than can be routinely housed in a month, a minimum of 3. And same way for chronic homelessness. There are fewer than 3 people experiencing chronic homelessness at any given time, or 1% of the total number of individuals on the last point in time count that they've done. So this has to be sustainable. This is not just a one-time, we did it and we're done. This has to be a sustainable solution. Okay, so how have they done this? And I cannot claim to be part of this in any way. I'm just letting you know that this is the larger context of what's happening in Rockford. So part of the way that they've done this is they're using real-time person-specific data. They call it the by name list. They know every person who is a veteran who is homeless by name. And they know every person who is experiencing chronic homelessness by name. And they're bringing together the various organizations that, for example, veterans organizations, and that can work together to target resources for these specific people. And since they know them by name, not just the number of people who are homeless, they're able to better serve them and make sure that within a month they're getting housed. So that is what's happening here, which is kind of a cool thing, and you're welcome to look and find out more about it. I'm no expert on it, but I think it's awesome that we are working alongside this great effort that's happening. COVID hit, right? And of course, that has thrown a monkey wrench in things, as it's thrown a monkey wrench in so many aspects of our lives. The next population that they were going to work toward having functional zero homelessness dovetails with our population. It's youth, families, and single adults, a lot of whom right, would be possibly attending Rock Valley College. So we did partner with some of the organizations that are part of this effort. And I'm hoping that we can continue to partner with them as well and get input from this great work that they're doing for our community. So to tell you a little bit more about what it looks like at CTE, or at not just CTE, at the larger part of the college, I pulled data for all students, not just CTE students, the total students at Rock Valley College, that this is the question that's on the enrollment form. Do you have reliable housing? Yes, no. Okay, we didn't want to use the word homeless because people who are couch surfing might not consider themselves to be homeless. Honestly, people who are, Rose can tell you, people who are living in their cars sometimes don't want to consider themselves homeless. So do you have reliable housing is a more comfortable way to get to the same idea. So total students in spring of 2021, you can see 563. And then as for spring of 2022, we've had an increase. We're at 586. Since we are talking specifically about CTE students, I did break it down a little further. And so this is just specifically CTE students. So 112 in 2021, 132. So again, we've had an increase. Doing the same thing for out of workforce, the total students. This is what is on the enrollment form where we capture that information. I don't love this, but if any of you are familiar with the definition for out of workforce individual, it's about that long. So we have very limited space on the enrollment form. So this was kind of our attempt at trying to get to the spirit of what an out of workforce individual is. Unemployed or underemployed, experiencing difficulty obtaining or upgrading employment. Really, it should say something about returning to the workforce after caring for a family member, but it's really tough to fit all of that in that little space on the enrollment form. So work in progress. And also just to make sure that you all know, we are a work in progress for sure. We are employing strategies, we're working on things, but we in no way have all the solutions here. We're just in a process, as we all are. So again, for total students, 88, and then in spring of 2022, 132. So we've had an increase. If we break that down by CTE, you can see we also had an increase in students who were out of workforce. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our initial process where we started to really lay the groundwork for what we were going to do for our special populations to try to further educate people on the campus about these groups of folks. So we have a Perkins team made up of CTE deans and leaders across campus, and we meet monthly. That's been happening for a long time. That's not new. And when these super strategies documents, those of you who have been around for a little while here, these may look familiar to you. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe Brittany was the author of these. When these documents were released, we started planning ways that we could provide professional development to the campus on each of the special populations. So each of the members of the Perkins team chose a special population, and we all started recruiting additional members from across campus for the work groups. These super strategies documents, and then also the webinars that accompanied them, these were invaluable because it sort of gave us that the starting point for everybody, because at different times people were joining the groups or they'd find out about it and someone would refer somebody in. And so just to make sure we were all like on a level playing field and everybody like ground zero, what everybody understood about this, we used these super strategies documents and webinars. Every new person, they got a copy of this and a link to the webinar. So that was kind of what they needed to kind of get their mind around what we were up to and what we were going to be doing. So those were really invaluable to kind of, level set us so that we all were starting from the same point. I know this is a messy slide. Don't worry. I know it's difficult to see. You don't need to get in here. I'm just talking about, the general overview of what this is. Any of my Perkins people, we've been working with programs of study, and part of programs of study requires us to look at disaggregated data by program so that we are seeing, for example, how many homeless students there are in a particular program. Making that data available to the program chairs, coordinators, so that they're aware of what the actual demographic makeup is of the students in their program. So that whole effort sparked our wonderful IR folks to make this spreadsheet. And I know it looks hairy, but just the overview to show you down here is where people can just choose their particular program. And then all of this will change and it'll filter to the students in their program. And then they can go up here. These are the various special populations. They can choose homeless, yes. And all of this will reset to the homeless students in, for example, fire science. And then you can see what this number will change to only the number of homeless students in fire science. And then you can see the racial and ethnic makeup, the gender, are they first generation, a bunch of different information broken down by that special population or out of workforce or whichever one you're looking at. This was incredibly helpful. And what we found was, I'm picking on fire science because our great coordinator was shocked to find out that he had 13 students in his program who had said that they were experiencing unreliable housing. And he did not think that that was a problem for any of his students. So he expressed to me that it made him aware that he needs to be much more diligent about making sure that he points students toward resources, or that he doesn't make assumptions about who's sitting in his classroom, because you just don't know, all except now we kind of do. So that's helpful. So this same information, this data dashboard that our IR team created, this was also what the various special populations work groups used when they were preparing their presentations, which I'm going to talk about next. Here we go. Not a very exciting slide. This was 2021, y'all. I don't know how life was for you, but we were online for our faculty staff development day. We were online. So this is just a snippet from what we had done for the online program for that. So in spring of 2021, we had a mandatory training session for all faculty and staff on special populations. And so all those wonderful people who had been recruited into the work group, led by the folks from the Perkins team, each of them gave a very brief, like 4-minute overview of special populations, looking at the special populations in our area, like the number of homeless or out of workforce students in our area, and then also giving those numbers of the students at RVC, and then talked as well about best practices for recruitment and support for those students. So everybody at the college who attended that day was exposed to this idea of special populations and what they were and what the barriers were and the things that they needed to be supported. So that was a wonderful opportunity that we were given. And I am really grateful. And I feel like that just helped to really solidify a lot of the work that has gone on since then, because people know now what we're talking about. It's not just something in the corner of Perkins. People know about this across campus, about special populations. At that same faculty staff development day, we offered an optional breakout session where we had breakout rooms for each of the different special populations. And faculty and staff could come and talk with the person who was monitoring that room about their experiences with the different special populations, things that they had seen, barriers that they knew about, things that they were doing to support those students. And so that was another great way that we were able to gather information on best practices, boots on the ground at RVC. What are you doing to support people? If you know that they're homeless, what are you doing? That kind of a thing. So After the faculty staff development day, we sent out a survey. And this is just a little snippet from the survey. And I think it's pretty incredible that we had 56 people respond to the survey. It was very short, it was 4 questions. One of the questions we asked for additional suggestions for recruitment or support, and we had 11 people provide comments on additional suggestions of things that we could do for these specific populations. We also asked if anyone would be interested in joining a special populations work group for the work that was going to continue. We had 7 people who joined the special pops work group based upon that. So it was a resounding success. And I feel like just did an amazing job of raising awareness and sort of setting the table for the work that has continued to move forward. Sorry, y'all. So we had nine special populations. So each one of the special populations kind of forged their own path on what their connections were going to look like. Some of the groups decided to do direct outreach to students. So for example, students who are pursuing non-traditional careers for their gender, they would just talk to, if you've got a female student in engineering, let's just talk with her and get her experiences. So some people went about it that way. Some people surveyed students, like our veteran and active military, she surveyed the students, the leader of that work group. I have to tell you, in all honesty, I was also part of the English language learner group, and we tried to hold a focus group for students. It was a no-go. Nobody showed up. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. But that's one way that some of our groups were trying to connect and to get input. Most of our groups went the other direction and actually held community-based organizations, hosted them at a focus group. So that involved, you know, identifying who we might know at the organizations, identifying who the contact person was at the organization, cold calling, because sometimes there were no email addresses we could get a hold of, or emailing people, following up, all of that. And then eventually we, we invited them to a Zoom, at that time, focus group, and hosted them and heard their opinions. I'll talk more about that with the out of workforce students experiencing homelessness group specifically in just a second. So based upon the input that we got from the faculty and staff at the faculty staff development day, the survey afterwards, contact with students and their responses, contact with the focus groups from community-based organizations, each one of these 9 special populations work groups developed their own action plan with recommendations for recruitment and recommendations for support that were specific to RVC.
And we have a question.
Yes.
Asking about some examples of the CBOs that were reached out to, and how do you identify those specific groups?
Sure. I'll actually share, since we're talking specifically about out of workforce and experiencing homelessness, I'll show you in 2 slides who attended our work, our focus group. And it was really just kind of, if somebody knew somebody, we have several people on campus who are very well connected and know a lot about organizations in the community. I'm not from Rockford, so I felt a little at a loss there and was relying heavily on other people's networks. So sometimes people would know, oh, you need to call this person. And then sometimes when I would call that person, I would ask, do you have any suggestions for other people that, oh, thank you, other people that I might need to contact, and other people who should be part of this. So some of it was just getting there, like, who else should I be asking besides you? That was part of what we did. And some of it was just, you know, searching the website, kind of finding who are the key players, who keeps coming up again and again for these. And of course, we reached out to some of them and some of them didn't come, right? Just the timing didn't work. It was just the way it was. But yes, hold that thought, and I will give you examples in just a little bit for that. So on kind of a rolling deadline, we had each of the special populations work groups present their action plan to the Perkins team. So every month we would have one or two all year long that would present those action plans to the Perkins team for their review. And you know, with the idea that eventually these were going to be implemented, right? That's the next phase. That's where we're working toward right now. I'm going to take a quick sip. It wasn't COVID, y'all, but there are other awful things out there. Okay, so currently, the folks who develop these action plans, we're meeting once a month in the large group. Everybody in all of those special populations work groups, we're all meeting once a month. And then on alternating months, those special pops work groups are meeting on their own to work toward implementation of the action plans. So currently they're using a Google Jamboard. They sort of have a community space, and they're developing priorities, timelines, identifying the resources needed, things like that. We're kind of the more practical nuts and bolts of how to implement these things. So that's where we are right now. So as like I said, we're still in process. There are some great things that we're doing, but there are also some great things that we have the potential to do, which we're excited about. All right. So these are the wonderful, wonderful members of our special pops work groups. We combined, because we had small attendance at the two individual groups, we combined these together because we thought that there was significant overlap between them. But apparently, Brittany thought so too, because she rolled them together for one webinar. So these are the folks who have been part of it. Sometimes there are 5 people, sometimes there are 3 people on a group. It just depends. But and you know, as needed, they'll grab people to help with things. But this is a pretty large group since we did end up combining, and we've had some new people join. But you can see from the titles that there's people from all over campus who are part of these groups. And here's the slide that I promised. This is we invited. I should have looked at how many we invited. We invited way more than 13. So maybe we got half the number that we invited, but 13 people from the community attended, and these were the places that they came from. So we had the Workforce Connection, which is our local WIOA organization. We had like homeless shelter organizations. We had someone from Rockford Mass Transit. We had St. Elizabeth Catholic Community Center, where a lot of people who are homeless access things that they need through them. We've had people from the Salvation Army, Rockford Public Schools, the Families in Transition Coordinator came. So, you know, it's just a matter of reaching out and hoping that the time and the day that you picked worked out well for them. But we have people that I've got on kind of my tickler file who weren't able to make it, but are interested in being a part. Okay, so our particular, so now I'm moving into our particular, the out of workforce homeless group. Our particular twofold goal was to increase enrollment of students who are out of workforce or experiencing homelessness in short-term certificates. This comes right out of the focus group. This is what we heard from the community organizations, that is what they're going to most be interested in. They're going to want something that they can get into quickly and out of and start earning money quickly. So short-term certificates really became clear that it would be a focus for this group. And then providing wraparound support for students through to completion for them. So those were our 2 goals. And then the strategies that we came up with in the action plan to make these things happen are to improve website navigation. This was another thing we heard from the focus group, was that if you are not a student at Rock Valley, or you are not aware of, if you've never been to college, you're not aware of the academic calendar, it's very hard to navigate the website. It's hard to search and find, you don't even know what terms to put in. So, you know, that is actually something that is in process. Our website is going to be redesigned. One of the things that came about is that it would be great if we had a resource page that was up to date and had things like resources on campus. We have wonderful resources on campus, but often students don't know that they exist. So, highlighting our on-campus resources like the food pantry or like the career closet. And then also community-based resources as well, the shelters, childcare, things like that, scholarships that are available from our foundation. And on that include lists or a link to a list of short-term certificates for people who might be disadvantaged in some way by being part of one of these special populations. Those short-term certificates could be particularly helpful to them. And then having a person who would regularly update this information. One of the things that was mentioned too was that it would be helpful to have printed material that was available, but again, kind of tailored specifically to the reluctant, photos and testimonials, emphasizing potential earnings and timelines for completion. Providing a specific contact person and possibly even start dates and times, because if you're not on the academic calendar and you're like, I think I'm going to go for it, and then you decide you're going to enroll, and then it turns out the next class doesn't start for another 4 weeks or whatever, it's helpful if they know from the starting point, like when those classes are starting. Having QR codes on the publicity so that a student, this was again from the focus group, so that students can use their cell phone and not have to navigate the website, just use the QR code to get right to the page with either the resources that are available at Rock Valley or the program, the short-term list of short-term certificates or more information about automotive or whatever. And then distributing these print resources in public locations like Walgreens, laundromats, libraries, temp agencies, things like that. Building those community relationships. We've already got a great group of people from the community who have been involved in our focus groups, ensuring that we don't lose those connections, right? Maybe having a special POPs advisory committee, and we meet once a year and let them know what new things are happening here, and they can let us know what new things are happening in their areas. Have there been law changes? What's happening? Are we seeing an influx of certain kinds of people experiencing homelessness? And again, make them aware of on-campus opportunities. They can come to recruit them to come to community fairs, right? Or spotlight them, the organizations and what they do in our daily news, things like that. Keep those relationships going. Again, these recruitment events, we were talking about how it's not enough to host something here, right? Especially for the people in these special populations who might be a little bit more reluctant and don't necessarily see themselves as college material, right? Going to where they are, going to the Boys and Girls Club, YWCA, the Rockford Housing Authority, things like that. Having CTE faculty and staff provide on-site demonstrations regarding short-term certificates or ICAPS options or the WEI grant that we have. Having the tech bus come so that they can enroll or so that they can do some sort of hands-on activity. And again, the partnership with the Workforce Connection, which is our WIOA funded organization, that's invaluable because a lot of these special population students are automatic qualifiers for the Workforce Connection to provide tuition reimbursement for up to $13,000. So strengthening that connection and making sure that we are shepherding students through the process of getting enrolling under the Workforce Connection so that they can access those funds. For our retention strategies, kind of the overarching goal was that we needed to improve systems of identifying students. we identify the students because of the enrollment form and whether they click yes or no on the enrollment form. But there are other ways that we can do that. We are excited. Like I said, we're a work in progress. We've got we've upgraded our CRM, and this is going to allow us to better identify, track, and communicate with our special pop students. We're looking at, kind of getting ahead of myself here, but we're looking at surveying students at mid-semester to catch some of those more fluid special populations. You might not have been homeless when you enrolled, but you might be 3 months later. And with the new CRM, I'm super excited because it sounds like we'll be able to tailor responses from the survey based on what they say and provide them with resources, both on campus and linking them to resources off campus. And then also linking them to advisors who will work specifically with them. We're implementing a case management system with our advisors. And this is, again, all a work in progress. But the idea is we already have some advisors who are tailored to specific students. One of our advisors works specifically with veterans and active military. Well, that's one of our special populations right there. So she is the one who's very knowledgeable about that. So if someone discloses something on a survey or on the FAFSA, that person would automatically kind of get, brought to the advisor's attention who is working in that area. In the same way, if a student mentions that they are experiencing unreliable housing, right, Rose, who's going to be talking in just a few slides, Rose would be the one who that person would be alerted she would be alerted about that person's status. So again, developing these advisors who and personal success counselors who are kind of the point people for these special populations so that they understand the resources that are available and can hook them up with the things that will be helpful to them. Right. Let's see, I wanted to say that for marketing material, it's important that we don't use the word homeless because students who are couch surfing, students who have unreliable housing, staying with their aunt 1 week, a friend the next week, they often don't consider themselves homeless because it's just a temporary situation. Rose was telling me about one of her students who was living in his car and he didn't consider himself homeless because it was a temporary situation. Right. So using the word temporary living arrangement is a much better way to kind of catch their attention, because if they see homeless, they're not going to think that they're part of that group. They're thinking on the streets. That's what they're thinking. So again, having a specific contact person that can put them in touch with the resources, that can track, that can follow up with them is, I think, really crucial. All right. I've got 2 more slides and then I'm turning it over to Rose. Promoting resources that are already available. And I'm sure this is true with your colleges as well, that we have so many resources, but often our students don't know that we have them at all, or they might know we have them, but they don't know where it's located. How do you get to the food pantry? Where is it? Who's the person that I contact about gas cards? What does that even look like? I know it's there, but I don't know how to get to it. So providing better roadmaps for students so that they know how to access the things that we already have. Again, if we get to the point where we have that resource web page that is fully developed, making sure that that's linked on the syllabi, or Eagle is our learning management system, linked on the learning management system so that students can click right there and then see the resources that are available to them. We're already offering workshops, and maybe your colleges are too, on all of these great things. But again, with that CRM, we'll be able to push out advertisement for these things specifically to people who could benefit the most from it. Career services, we've got a phenomenal career services. But again, it's making sure that we're pushing for people who are out of workforce or homeless, that we're pushing, workshops on employability skills, that we're pushing, did you know that we can help you revise your resume? Just again, bringing it up again and again and again to their attentions. We got new students coming in all the time who don't know about what we have. Hosting campus and community resource fairs, roping in those folks from the focus groups, again, so that they get that exposure and that our students are aware of those organizations, both in person and virtual. All right, here's my last slide. Expanding educational equity and access for these students. So these were, again, the recommendations that the action or the focus group came up with, that we should increase online and weekend courses for short-term certificate or ICAPS programs, that we should expand the use of open educational resources or provide loaner copies of required texts, expanding paid internships or micro internships. These students can't afford to take time off to do an internship. They've got family responsibilities, work responsibilities. So finding ways that these students can still get that leg up by having these experiences, these work-based learning experiences, but getting them paid to do so. And providing assistance for financial barriers. This sharing of information about who the special population students are can be really powerful, because if for example, the Dean of Allied Health knows early on that she's got several students who are falling into some of these vulnerable populations, and they're going to need to pay for a certification exam at the end of their coursework that's not covered by financial aid, she could reach out to them early on and say, hey, did you know there are scholarships available that can cover your certification exam fees? Why don't we get that paperwork started so that we can get that opportunity available to you? And then just ongoing training all the time for faculty, for staff, just raising that awareness that not all of our students come with as easy of a road in front of them as some of our other students, and just reminding them what the barriers are and what the best practices are that we can do to try to improve their educational experience and help them reach their goals. And I am going to stop sharing, and Rose can take over.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to share again. It may just take a moment.
If it's not working, Rose, I can just pull mine back up.
That would be great.
Sure. Just tell me when to move it for you. Let me swap this real quick. All right, there you go. Go to the next
Okay.
one. Yeah.
So just to share a few statistics with you and how like the homeless higher education liaison came about. There was a national study conducted at the University of Chicago that identified 4.2 million youth and young adults experience homelessness on their own during a 12-month period. So this study was inclusive of 3.5 million young adults between the ages of 18 through 25. In 2019, there was also a study conducted of 171 two-year institutions and 56 four-year institutions. And it was identified that homelessness affected 17% of the respondents, and at the 2-year institution, 16%. Excuse me, that's at the 4-year institution, it was 16%. So as these statistics reflect, there's a lot of students experiencing homelessness, but how do we identify, how do we help these students? So now many of the higher education institutions are required to assign liaisons to help students to provide resources for them that are experiencing homelessness. So this is similar to the K through 12, where they have liaisons in schools ready available to help families and students. The Illinois Public Education, the Public Act also requires that the housing liaisons at universities and colleges be available. So this is how it's kind of mirroring what's available through the K through 12, because we have students at the college level that are homeless. So what does this exactly mean, or how is this defined? So homelessness can be students living in motels, transitional shelters, living with friends, or in places or dwellings that are not suitable for people to live, condemned buildings and things of that nature. So according to a 2010 study, it stated that most well-paying jobs require some education beyond high school. So post-secondary education is necessary to move out of poverty and homelessness and to live a healthy, productive life. So you can advance to the next slide, Anna. So some of the resources available to assist with finding out how you can help and to get training are listed here, but also having the collaborations, which Anna talked about a lot, with the K through 12 Families and Transitions Coordinator. So reaching out to them and finding out about students that are going to come into your institution that identified as homelessness and identified as homeless in the 12th grade. So this has been helpful for me. I did have a student that I'm now aware of that I would not have been aware of if I did not reach out to the coordinator. So a smoother transition was able to be made because the student was able to know that I existed, where to find me, and then also to be referred to other resources on campus. We have that question on the application. However, some students think that since they have a place to lay their head, then they don't fall into this category of insecure housing. So they don't check that box. So being able to reach out to the school counselors, the school social workers, the mental health counselors, financial aid personnel, just anybody that you know that would come in contact with students. And then also having that close collaboration with homeless shelters, because students may want to receive education but may not know the routes. So you're helping other young individuals in the community. So that's another way to access. And you can go to the next slide, Anna. So establish a means of identifying housing insecure students, going back to that question on the enrollment application. So I've coordinated and reached out to our Dean of Enrollment Student Services to find out the names of these students, the phone numbers, the contact information. So I had completed a referral form, and that form, it defines what homelessness is. So basically having specific verbiage to reach out to the student and to ask them, you know, what was meant by that, how I could support them, what their needs are, things have changed. Maybe they have housing, but maybe not a job, or maybe they have a job, but struggle with getting food. So getting them connected to the local Department of Human Services. Just making sure, okay, you're living on your own, but we want to keep you secure and living on your own and being able to have the resources you need to be successful in college. And then collaborating with campus staff. So once again, the special populations group, that has been phenomenal and very helpful for me to come in contact with, because they have connections with community resources or specific individuals that have been helping the homeless population in the Rockford community. So once you identify these students, having a system to track these students and to follow up routinely with them, just letting them know who you are, where you are, and how they can get in contact with you. Because you may reach out at a time that they're fine, and then 2 weeks later, they're not. Also, that community partnership or relationships, if possible, finding out like who the case manager is, so you can find out how many beds are available. If they don't have any beds available, why would you reach out to them? Things change consistently, but just, getting your avenues in place so you're not taking up the students' time. And the Illinois Board of Homeless Education made a very good point about trauma, and not having secure housing is a form of trauma, not making them repeat their story over and over. If you have that intake form, maybe you can forward that intake form to the local shelter or whoever the student is being referred to, so they won't have to keep going through, their situation over and over again. And that is easier said than done, because sometimes they want to speak to the actual individual. So you may send that referral form, but they want to know some specifics maybe that were left out on that form. So having that collaboration is important, because as you work together, you're going to know the questions, the leading questions that they may ask for. So adding that to your form, and of course, it's going to be a continuous process. And that's what I'm learning in my journey. And Anna, you can thank you. So another helpful tip is also to train faculty and staff so they know the signs of homelessness. And the schoolhouse.org is an excellent resource. They have some signs of homelessness listed, and making sure that the faculty and staff are aware of these. The student may not say, but if they're sleeping or depressed, or maybe showing up in the same clothing, things like that, so they can reach out to the homeless liaison and let them know that there's a student in need. Right now, we're working on a tracking form, an electronic tracking form that the faculty and staff have access to. So they can utilize that form and kind of put down what they see or what they have observed and send it to the homeless liaison and have them reach out to the student. It's important also that they are aware that a homeless and higher education liaison exists, because they may not know. I had the opportunity to present at another staff development day as a personal success counselor, but also adding that additional piece. And once again, going over those signs associated with homelessness and knowing the correct verbiage to use. So when you are meeting with these students, it's important that you have a space that is comfortable and relaxed, not like set up like maybe like a government office, but making them feel comfortable enough to talk to you. And maybe you're going to have to ask some personal questions. So kind of letting them know, okay, I'm going to ask some questions, and feel free to decline if you don't want to answer. But the reason why I'm asking these questions is so I can connect you to this resource. And this is why they need to know that. Once again, those partnerships on and off campus, having a connection to your school pantry. So maybe the student, if they want to be more discreet about things, when they can pick up their food, where to go, how to even sign up for the pantry. And then that consistent follow up with the students to monitor their academic and physical and emotional well-being. So just being mindful of those things. And you can advance on. So these are some of the resources that I spoke about, but also this having the opportunity to present, like the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support, giving us the opportunity to connect with other individuals that are going through the same process or having a work in progress like I am, but just having the opportunities to connect and also find out what other schools are doing. And that's another resource as well. Universities like in California, they already have a basic needs advisor set up, a homeless advisor. So taking advantage of looking through their website and reaching out to individuals in those positions so they can kind of help you along. It was very helpful for me getting help with the referral form, knowing what verbiage to use, like what questions to ask, and like some of the frequent situations that college students encounter. For example, on my campus, there's a lot of students that have issues with their family. So their family may kick them out and they live with a friend, but kind of helping them get through that process. Okay, if you go to the shelter, then the shelter is going to refer you to a housing program. It'll be a waiting, process, but just helping the students through so they can have secure housing. I also wanted to make you aware that there is a grant available. You could check the Illinois Board of Housing Education. The deadline is November 21st, but this grant is to help school with funding for homeless students. Thanks again. You can move on. I believe it's questions. So does anyone have any questions?
Rose, there's a question in the chat that says, can you share the scholarship again?
Oh, the grant. Okay, that's through the Illinois Board of Housing Education. And you could go on the website, it's on the initial screen. And it has like all of the, the actual application and more information listed.
And I do see some questions coming through about the webinar being available to download and the slides. We will make all of those available to you. I do ask that you just give me a little bit of grace because I do want to edit the recording and get that uploaded. But yes, we will make sure that all of these resources will be shared out. In fact, as participants on this webinar, early next week, you should be receiving a follow-up email with the link to the posted recording and the slides.
And I just wanted to add the full name of that grant is In Student Housing Security. That's for Illinois.
Okay, perfect. So I do know that we are right at 11:30. So I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. However, we have Natasha put, this chat is just going crazy, guys. So Natasha says, thank you both for sharing this great information. I know that the colleges are still having some difficulty collecting this information and really determining how best to help. And so I think this has been some great information to be shared. And that's a lot of, Anna and Rose and I had conversations prior to of, well, should we share this? Or, we kind of hit a roadblock here. Should we share that? And absolutely, because I think everyone is kind of in that same boat of this being new and kind of figuring out how we go about that and who do we have those conversations with. So I would encourage the programs to, start those conversations. Maybe it's not, I know Anna was saying that their community is very much behind this charge of supporting and helping homeless individuals within their community. So have those conversations, ask those questions, because there may be initiatives that are taking place that just are not being promoted very well. So ask and see. We don't want to necessarily recreate the wheel if we don't have to. So a lot of thank yous, a lot of wonderful presentation. Mackenzie did share that ICCB does have a homeless liaison listserv. The colleges were contacted in the summer to identify. The email went out to the chief student service officers. So feel free to kind of follow up with that and be like, hey, I was told that this information was shared. Where are we at with that? And see what information you can get there. All right, so I don't necessarily see any questions, but again, a lot of thank yous. Really appreciated the information. Again, this is being recorded. We will share it out along with the slides. So Anna and Rose, thank you so much. I know I gained a lot from the information that you shared. And I know there's a lot of ICCB folk on here who are like, ooh, Rock Valley, where else can we have them present and share this information? So your emails may be popular here pretty soon. So
anyone, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We put our email addresses at the end of the slide, so we'd be happy to talk with anybody about anything.
All right. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye all.